The House has passed a measure condemning the global boycott movement against Israel, which seeks to end the oppression of Palestinians through boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS. The bill was pushed through by Democrats with an overwhelming majority of 398 to 17 votes. Those voting in favor included key members identified with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, Khanna, Tulsi Gabbard, and Ayanna Pressley. Back when it was introduced in March, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi touted the anti-BDS bill in a speech before AIPAC, the Israel lobby group.
We must also be vigilant against bigoted or dangerous ideologies masquerading as policy, and that includes BDS. Last week, we introduced the Schneider, that would be Brad Schneider of Illinois, and Nadler, that would be Jerry Nadler of New York, the Schneider-Nadler resolution in the House that explicitly opposes the BDS movement.
Ali Abunimah is co-founder of the Electronic Intifada and author of The Battle for Justice in Palestine. Welcome, Ali. Let me start by asking you, this was a Democratic Party sponsored bill. What do you think was the political thinking behind it?
Well, first let me say, Aaron, congratulations on your new show. We have missed regular doses of your critical and absolutely necessary journalism in this unhinged time that we live in. Let me say that...
Well, thank you, Ali. Thank you. We didn't plan that, but I appreciate that.
Well, I know that many people share my excitement at this new project that you're doing. It's very necessary. So, this bill or this resolution that was passed with overwhelming backing, not just from Democrats, but Republicans. I mean, sadly, this is what the bipartisanship everyone claims to clamor for looks like. It's this vote on a resolution that condemns and smears a nonviolent popular movement for freedom, equality, and justice for the Palestinian people. And I think the political impetus of it, in a sense, is to try to square the circle of the fact that the grassroots of the Democratic Party totally rejects the anti-Palestinian politics of the Democratic elites and the donor class and Nancy Pelosi and her circles. And so what it tries to do is square the circle of condemning and attacking the Palestinians for using nonviolent means to struggle for their rights with the concern over free speech, because a lot of the other anti-BDS legislation, anti-boycott, divestment, and sanctions legislation that has been advanced in Congress directly infringes on the First Amendment. It directly attacks constitutional rights. And this particular resolution, while harshly condemning the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, purports to defend free speech and to point out that Americans, can engage in constitutionally protected activity. But ultimately what it does is, as Josh Rubner wrote for the Electronic Intifada, it's another stepping stone to even more harsh and unconstitutional state and federal legislation attacking the free speech rights of Americans.
Let me put to you one statement that I saw from Ayanna Pressley defending her vote in favor of this measure, and she was criticized for that because she was the only member of the so-called squad to support this measure. She said that she cast her vote in support of it, quote, as an expression of solidarity with Jewish families and with marginalized communities that continue to face heightened threats to their safety in this volatile moment driven by hateful rhetoric from the Trump administration, unquote. So Pressley there appears to be conflating Trump's rhetoric, which includes attacking people like Ilhan Omar who defend Palestinian rights, conflating Trump's rhetoric and BDS. Your response to that, Ali?
Yeah, it's so disturbing what Ayanna Pressley said, and so disappointing, because she equates supporting Jewish families. She doesn't refer to which Jewish families. I don't know if she's speaking in the context of American Jewish communities or Israeli Jews. She doesn't say there. but she conflates supporting Jewish people against anti-Semitism with attacking Palestinians. And that's exactly what Israel wants us to do. It wants us to equate the movement for Palestinian rights with anti-Semitism, and it's just a totally false and reprehensible equation. And I mean, let me read you this line from the resolution that Ayanna Pressley and 397 other members of Congress voted for. Quote, "Whereas cooperation between Israel and the United States is of great importance, especially in the context of rising anti-Semitism, authoritarianism, and security problems in Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa." End quote. I mean, the irony here is that who is aligned with the Trump administration and the rise of authoritarianism and the rise of racism? It is Israel. It is the Israeli government that sent people out after the Pittsburgh synagogue massacre to defend Trump and to try to deflect the blame for the neo-Nazi gunman's massacre of Jews, to deflect blame onto the left and the Palestine Solidarity Movement. It was Israel doing that. It was the Israeli ambassador, Ron Dermer, who went on MSNBC to say, oh, well, anti-Semitism comes from both sides, not necessarily neo-Nazis.
And to simply say that this is because of one person, or it only comes on one side, is to not understand the history of anti-Semitism or the reality of anti-Semitism. One of the big forces in college campuses today is anti-Semitism, and the anti-Semites are usually not neo-Nazis on college campuses. They're coming from the radical left.
And they did the same after the synagogue massacre in Poway, California. So if you really want to stand against anti-Semitism and to stand with Jewish communities and to stand with other victims of the rising tide of racism, you ought to vote against this resolution and stand with Palestinians, stand with Jewish communities and organizations that are working for universal rights, not line up behind this resolution that ticks all the talking points that the Israeli government wants members of Congress to repeat. And it's just tragic that someone with such promise and who provides such sort of hope as Ayanna Pressley to many people would fall for this. And I don't know if it's naive or cynical, but it's just wrong how she voted. And the same goes for other so-called progressives like Khanna and also Tulsi Gabbard, who voted for it. And it's just, to me, reprehensible and indefensible.
And all this comes around the same time as Democrats, especially in the leadership, are doing their best to distance themselves from Ilhan Omar, sparked by win back earlier this year when she criticized AIPAC, and Pelosi led the charge in basically throwing her under the bus. And I'm wondering if you could talk about measures like this coming up with such a fervent Democratic support in the context of their efforts to distance themselves from Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, you have to note that during the whole Trump attack on the Squad, when he was tweeting just disgusting lies about Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and others, for example, he lied repeatedly that they had referred to, quote, evil Jews, which is just a fabricated quote. They had never done that. But he repeatedly invoked Israel and said they're anti-Israel, and they're anti-Semitic. And what we see the right wing and the Republicans doing is borrowing the tactic that we've seen used so effectively in Britain to attack the Labour Party by constantly attacking Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party for supposed anti-Semitism. The vast majority of the claims bogus and fabricated. Why? Because Jeremy Corbyn and the new leadership in the Labour Party are pro-Palestinian. So the wedge they're using is to accuse them of anti-Semitism. Now we see Trump and the Republicans doing exactly the same with the Democratic Party. And instead of learning the lesson from the Labour Party and drawing a line in the sand and taking a principled position and say, we're absolutely against anti-Semitism, just like we're against every other form of bigotry, but we believe people should advocate for equal rights and human rights for Palestinians, what they're doing is they think an appeasement strategy will work, and that's what this resolution is part of. If we attack the Palestinians enough, if we smear their movement enough, they will stop accusing us of being anti-Jewish and anti-Israel. And I have to commend Ilhan Omar for really her courage in not being cowed by this. She's one of the very few, because she has put forward her own resolution supporting the principle of boycott, and it so far has 14 co-sponsors, and there's a big overlap between those 14 and the 17 who voted against the atrocious smear motion that Congress passed the other day.
Ali Abunimah, co-founder of the Electronic Intifada, author of The Battle for Justice in Palestine. Thanks very much.
You're welcome, Aaron.